Have you ever stopped to think that not all pain is a punishment? Some are like secret messages sent from heaven itself, written with tears, but sealed with promises. Maybe today you're going through a period of silence, closed doors, and nights that seem endless. But what if all of this is just the beginning of training for something much bigger than you can imagine? History shows this. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he knew treason, being sold into slavery and imprisonment. Before David wore the crown, he faced giants and survived persecution. Each test was a step on the ladder of purpose. What you live now is not the end. It is the most intense chapter of your preparation. The problem is that, in the midst of pain, the mind cries out, "God has abandoned me." But in reality, He is molding character, strengthening faith, and adjusting your heart. Just as gold needs fire to shine, you are going through the heat that forms people ready to carry authority and impact. Every test carries a goal: to break through comfort zones, teach you to depend on the supernatural, or reveal who is really by your side. When we understand this, pain changes its meaning. It is no longer just suffering and becomes a spiritual classroom. And that's just the beginning. Let's walk together through the 7 trials that prove that God knows exactly where you are and is already leading your steps to a place of honor, abundance, and victory. In the end, you will realize that no tears were wasted. If you already feel like you're being prepared for something big, write in the comments, "I believe," element, like share, and don't miss the ending, because the last trial will change the way you see everything you've ever lived. Now let's talk about the first of them. Imagine that your life is stable until suddenly everything starts shaking. What was right ceases to exist, and what was safe falls apart. This is how God breaks through comfort zones to open a new chapter. It was like that with Abraham, who left his land not knowing where he was going, and each step brought him closer to his destination. This first test is about transition. Change comes to tear down old structures and make room for something new. Maybe your relationships, your job, or your finances are being shaken up. But, as in the pruning of a tree, it is the removal of branches that opens the way for new fruit. Here God requires 2 things: obedience and renunciation. Obedience to follow without understanding the whole map. Renunciation to leave what we love if it holds us away from the purpose. This is when faith leaves the discourse and enters into practice. Moses had to exchange the comfort of Egypt for the silence of the desert to be prepared as a leader. What seemed like a loss was, in fact, a promotion in disguise. That initial jolt is the divine push that moves us forward. And as you go through this, don't be alarmed if God changes even the way you think and act. Transitions mess with everything: habits, routines, priorities. And this is only the first step. In the next step, we will face a challenge that can be even more difficult, when, even in the midst of change, God decides to remain in silence. Few experiences are as painful as praying, crying out, and seeking, and not hearing any answer. Divine silence is the school that few want, but it is in it that the giants of faith are born. Have you ever lived that moment when you pray, seek, cry out, and heaven doesn't seem to answer? It's like talking to someone on the other end of the line and hearing only silence. But it is precisely there that true faith is born. This is when prayer ceases to be just a request and becomes an act of unshakable trust. Job knew this. Even though he did not understand anything that was happening, he said, "Even if he kills me, I will wait for him." This kind of faith doesn't depend on feeling. It depends on choosing to believe, even when nothing makes sense. Silence is an invisible invitation to surrender. It is as if God asks, "Do you trust me even without any explanation?" At that moment, we learn to let go of control, stop trying to manipulate results, and accept that the time and the way belong to the Lord. And those who truly surrender end up witnessing miracles that they would never imagine. Here, patience is forged like gold in fire. David, anointed king, waited years to sit on the throne. He could have rushed things, but he chose to trust the process. This active waiting trains us to hear God in even the subtlest details. In the end, we realize that faith does not live only on visible miracles. Often it is in the stillness of those who remain firm that the greatest answers begin to be prepared. And when he finally speaks, the clarity that comes is capable of changing destinies. But there are pains that do not arise from silence, but of the wrong presence. Betrayal. Betrayal hurts like few things. It comes from where we least expect it, from hands that we once held with confidence. It's like being hit by an arrow while still slurring at the person who shot it. Joseph knew this wound when he was sold by his own brothers. Jesus, when he was delivered by Judas. When this happens, God is not trying to destroy us, but to purify us. It is like a filter that removes from our path those who cannot walk with us to the final destination. And in this process, masks fall. Those who seemed loyal reveal hidden intentions. Ties that seemed eternal are broken. And yes, it hurts to find out that some were around just out of interest. But this separation is strategic. God drives away those who would not bear to see their promotion or those who would compromise the mission. Rejection hurts, but it also liberates. It is at this moment that he calls us to forgive, not to minimize the pain, but to break the chains that would keep us stuck in the past. Forgiveness is the key that opens the door to moving forward. Betrayal also redefines our confidence. People fail, but God doesn't. It teaches us to place our identity and security in Him, not in the approval of others. Over time, this wound becomes discernment. You learn to recognize hearts, to choose covenants more wisely, and to better protect what God has placed in your hands. And when that lesson is completed, God takes us to another school, one of the hardest, learning to live by faith when even the springs that supported the path begin to dry up. Suddenly, what seemed taken for granted disappears. Employment, income, opportunities, everything starts to close. This is what happened to Elijah when the brook of Cherith, which kept him alive, dried up. But it wasn't abandonment, it was transition. God wanted to show that His provision is not dependent on a single source. Scarcity is the test that forces us to let go of human control. It is at this moment that we discover that He can open unlikely doors, send resources in unexpected ways, and even use people with little to support us, as He did with the widow of Zarephath. Here, we learn that the supernatural is not theory, it is the air we breathe. Scarcity has a curious way of revealing where our true security lies. When everything tightens, we realize that it is not the size of the bank account that keeps us standing, but the faithfulness of the one who sustains us. It is at this point that we learn to see what really matters and to value what previously went unnoticed. Trust is easy when everything is left over. It is really difficult to look at a limited scenario and yet declare with conviction, "The Lord will provide." It is in this delivery that creative miracles happen. Doors open from unlikely places, resources arrive in ways we would never imagine, and God's sustenance goes far beyond the material. He is able to pour peace in the midst of chaos, clarity in the midst of confusion, and strength when we are without strength. To depend on Him is safer than any strategy we can devise. This total dependence teaches us that provision is not the end goal, but only part of training for something greater. And then, just when we think we've learned our lesson, comes the next test, maintaining integrity when we're unfairly attacked. Few experiences are as disconcerting as being persecuted without having done anything to deserve it. It is to be in the center of the target without understanding the reason. That was the case with David, who, even though he loyally served Saul, had to flee for his life. God allows these moments to strengthen our resistance and give us spiritual authority over what affronts us. Here, character is tested in the fire. It's easy to fight back, but spiritual maturity is choosing not to descend to the same level as the attacker, just as Jesus did, remaining silent in the face of false accusations and trusting in the Father's judgment. These attacks reveal where our real confidence lies. Those who depend on people's approval fall fast. Whoever has his identity established in God remains. Every arrow thrown at us can become a tool of preparation. The resistance grows with each affront overcome. And over time, we understand that persecution is a sign of movement. The enemy does not waste ammunition against those who do not pose a threat. Therefore, keeping calm in the midst of the storm is not weakness, it is authority. It is trusting that Jesus is in the boat and that nothing will sink us. This faithfulness in times of attack does not go unnoticed. It is a living testimony to all who watch. And after that stage, God leads us to something even deeper: brokenness. Brokenness is the moment when He takes us beyond appearances and shapes us completely. It is the furnace of pain that does not destroy, but transforms. Like the potter with the clay, God removes impurities, refines every detail, and builds a character strong enough to sustain the weight of glory to come. It's where we learn that in order to carry something big, we first need to be shaped entirely. Brokenness is the phase in which God asks for everything. And He makes it clear that there is no middle ground. There is no way to be partially molded. It is the time to let go of pride, the plans we hold tightly, and even our own way of thinking, so that He has total freedom to act. Moises knew this process well. He spent 4 decades in the desert being trained before leading the liberation of Israel. At that time, God not only taught him, but fine-tuned his spiritual sensitivity to listen and obey without hesitation. This fire reveals what still needs to be healed. Sometimes we think we're ready, but the evidence exposes hidden wounds, wrong motivations, and areas of the heart that haven't yet surrendered. The pain of this revelation is actually an invitation to deep healing and genuine transformation. In brokenness, we learn that God's grace is more reliable than our own strength. As Paul said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." It is in fragility that His presence becomes most evident, guiding our steps and making our ears sensitive to His voice. The process makes us more like Christ. Pride gives way to meekness, self-sufficiency gives way to dependence, and a hard heart becomes compassionate. It is the ultimate training to carry greater responsibilities. God does not give great missions to those who have not yet been molded in secret. And then, when the character is aligned and the spirit is in tune, the most awaited stage arrives. The moment when the promises begin to take shape before our eyes. After going through each trial and remaining faithful, God begins to reveal the reason for each tear and each wait. It is not just a matter of receiving what we ask for, but of entering into the exact point of the plan that He has laid out from the beginning. It is harvest time, the fruit of obedience, perseverance, and faith. Hosea lived it. After years of pain and injustice, he saw the dream come true in front of his own brothers. Everything that seemed like defeat had actually been a divine strategy to save lives. When divine alignment happens, doors open at the right time, right connections arise, and opportunities flow naturally. It's no coincidence. It's the fulfillment of a promise. Those who have gone through the process know that they got here not by their own strength, but by the hand of God that never let go, not even on the quietest days. The understanding is also expanding. What was once a mystery is now clarity. Each step makes sense, and the experience turns into ministry so that we can help those who are still in the midst of the storm. God's presence becomes palpable. A molded heart recognizes His glory in every detail and remains humble, not letting victory steal the place of the source. It is a time of deep gratitude, but also of vigilance, because the process does not end here. The final step is to consolidate everything, to turn victory into testimony, and to remain faithful until the last chapter. As we look back, we understand that God never wastes pain. Every loss was preparation, every silence carried answers, and every dark night taught us to depend totally on Him. Victory is not the end point. It is the starting point for something even greater. This is the time to turn what you have earned into a living testimony, because it's not just about receiving blessings, it's about staying, to remain firm in the faith, rooted in the Word, with a heart full of love for people and humility intact before the Lord. True glory is not only in the act of conquering, but in living in such a way that each conquest points to God. So, stop and reflect. Which of these trials are you in right now? Are you resisting the process or letting it mold you? Are you leaning only on what you can see or planting your feet on the promise that God has already released about your life? These questions are not to generate guilt, but to ignite a new level of surrender. Remember, the same God who sustained Joseph in prison, David in the desert, Elijah before the dry stream, and Paul in the midst of prisons. It is the God who sustains you today. He has forgotten none of His promises and will not waste a tear of His own. When victory comes from Him, it is complete, abundant, and always brings glory to His name. Let's pray. Father, thank You for every trial that shapes my heart. Give me the strength not to give up, the patience to wait for Your time, and the humility to recognize Your hand in every detail. May my life be a living reflection of Your faithfulness, and that, at the end of it all, Your name will be exalted above all achievements. Amen. Now it's up to you. Write in the comments which of these trials you are facing. Like, share, and follow to receive messages that will strengthen your faith and prepare you to live the purpose that God has already designed for your story.